Good morning, students. Recall that last week we treated chapter 4, which had the title Traditions of Origin of Nigerian People, and we were able to look at the different migration stories of the different people in Nigeria and the categories of migration, values and significances of the migration story. Today, chapter 5, we are going to look at the early external influences, the Europeans and the Arabs' contact with the people of Nigeria. And in this contact, remember in chapter 4, we talked about how different communities in Nigeria came to be. This week, we are going to look at the first contact outsiders, foreigners had with Nigeria. And we identified two categories of foreigners that Nigerians had contact with. The first people are the Europeans, whom the Nigerian people first met through southern Nigeria. They actually came through Atlantic Ocean. And the first community they entered was Benin in Edo State. So, after that, we will look at the contact Nigerian people had with the Arabs. And this contact was through the Sahara Desert, and they came in through northern Nigeria. Before then, we are going to look at the objective of today's lecture. And we say that at the end of our discussion, students shall be able to examine the impact of the early contact with the coastal people, assess the early Christian missionary activities, investigate the impact of the Arab contact on the people of Nigeria. We look at the background to the European exploration of West Africa, which Nigeria is also included. When we talk about European, we don't mean that Britain, France, Spain, and the rest came into Nigeria at the same time. No, the first European nation that came to Nigeria is Portugal. Portugal can be called the pioneer European nation that visited Nigeria. It wasn't only Nigeria. They were the first to initiate the exploratory movement that covered both North Africa and Western Africa. We look at some of the terms on the slide. We say that the European countries have already been organized into powerful kingdoms as early as the 15th century ago. Prominent among those European countries was Portugal. She was about the first European country to think of exploring the African coastline and actually set about to do so. Behind the Portuguese drive to explore the African coast was the son of King John I of Portugal, Prince Henry the Navigator. Henry made use of the unique opportunities which Portugal had in Europe at the time to send out explorers to north and western coast of Africa. At this time in Europe, Portugal was free from any enemy invasion, since she was not involved in the power struggle which engaged the attention and resources of other European countries. And secondly, because of Portugal's geographical location in southern Europe, she was close to North Africa and could seek expansion towards that area. Henry gave some attention to court matters, but more attention to building the power and prestige of Portugal through geographical exploration. Now, we look at having established that Portugal was the first European country that came in contact with the Nigerian people. The contact, how did it look? What were the exchange? Yes, they have met. What did the people do? Was there marriage between Europeans and Africans? Were they playing football or what? What actually happened what this early contact with Portugal, what did it result to? This is what we are going to consider. And one of the major things that the contact resulted to was trade. And the early period of this trade, it favored both parties. Africans, Nigerians benefited from the trade in pepper, ivory, and others. But as time goes on, as we said here, as years rolled by, however, the benefit of the trade went more to the Europeans, with Africans or Nigerians having less opportunity. From the 16th century onward, however, the trade shifted away from exchange of raw materials and manufactured goods to trade in slaves. In the trade, Nigerian people supplied slaves, gold, ivory, pepper, corn arabic, and ostrich feathers in exchange for European goods like clothes, beads, trinkets, cowrie shells, and hardware. The Europeans bought all the articles they needed from the middlemen at the coast. As a result, they did not need to go into the hinterland. Trade grew and flourished between the Europeans and the indigenous people in the Benin area, the Ishekiri Kingdom, with its capital in Warri, Lagos, Calabar, and later also in the hinterland. Now we look at the Europeans or Portuguese motives for exploration of West Africa, which Nigeria was part of it. We want to know, they have given us many reasons why Portugal decided to explore North and West Africa. The reasons they gave ranged from political, economic, social, and others. That is what we are going to consider. The reasons why Portugal or European nations decided to come to Africa. Most times they will always project religion, evangelism as the sole reason why they came to Africa. But in this study, we will look beyond religion as the motivating factor. We will look at other things. And we say that number one, that there was a desire to find the source of the gold, ivory, slaves, and many other African products which reached European markets through North Africa. The second motive or reason why Portugal or European nations who followed later came to Africa was that they wanted to discover an alternative route to India and Spice Islands of the East. Thus, the Europeans wanted to throw off the commercial monopoly of the Italians in spice trade to avoid the high tolls or duties imposed on the eastern commodities by the Arab middlemen, and to recruit directly from the sources African slaves which were needed by some European communities. Thirdly, the Europeans wanted to convert Africans to Christianity. They believed that they would achieve this through the help of a legendary Christian prince called Preston John, whose kingdom was said to be in Ethiopia. In addition, the Christians wanted to stop the advance of the Muslims in sub-Saharan Africa. The fourth point is that the European countries, including Portugal, wanted to acquire colonies in Africa and Asia. Portugal believed that this will improve her power and importance in Europe. Between 15th and 16th centuries, the Portuguese, among other Europeans, enjoyed almost a century of trade monopoly on the West African coast. As time goes on, the trade between the Portuguese and the Nigerian people started declining to the extent that the Portuguese left Nigeria entirely. So we want to know the reasons why trade between Portugal and the Nigerian people declined. And we said here by the middle of the 16th century, Portuguese trade with Nigeria was decreasing. A number of reasons account for this development. Number one, the trade was no longer promising. The slaves, pepper, and ivory were no longer got in large quantities as expected. The Portuguese discovered that Nigerians were only interested in getting arms and ammunition from them without giving enough local products in return. Point number 3. The Portuguese also discovered that Asian commodities were paying more than the Nigerian articles, and therefore they decided to concentrate their efforts on the more profitable trade. Number 4. Portugal did not have the materials to tap the natural resources of the vast area under their control. The presence, that is point number 5, the presence of other European merchants and companies in West Africa destroyed their monopoly. As we rightly said, that Portugal enjoyed almost 1,100 years of uninterrupted relationship with West Africa, because they were the first to come in. But as other European nations started coming in, they could no longer compete with them. And that is what we are saying here, that the presence of other European merchants and companies in West Africa destroyed their monopoly. With time, the French, the Dutch, and the English competitors gradually displaced the Portuguese in West Africa. Now, we are now going to look at the results of the early European contact with the Nigerian people. Yes, we've met them. Remember that the first time Nigerians met with these people was the period our virginity got lost, because so many things occurred which also even led to the loss of our independence and colonization. So we are going to look at the results of the early European contacts. The early European contacts with Nigeria had far-reaching results, such as 1. In the first place, trade developed between the Europeans and Nigerians, and the coastal dwellers benefited immensely from this trade. The trade introduced to Nigerians goods which later became symbols for measuring the wealth of an individual. These goods include knives, hoes, guns, gunpowder, beads, glassware, clothes, and others. 2. The coastal trade attracted large numbers of people from the hinterland. They settled permanently with the coastal communities. Point number 3. The coastal trade greatly reduced the volume of trade across the Sahara to North Africa. This led to economic decline of many Nigerian states and empires in the north and a halt in the trans-Saharan trade. Number 4. Portuguese names given to many places and individuals have survived till today. Some of these names include Cape Verde, Elmina, Cape Palmas, and others. Portuguese words dominate the pidgin English spoken in most Nigerian markets and urban cities. For example, dash, which means give, sabi, which means to know. The Portuguese language is spoken in Benin's royal palace till today. Number 5. The Europeans introduced a variety of crops to the Nigerian area. The crops came mostly from Asia and South America. They include sugarcane, maize, pawpaw, clover, sweet potatoes, tobacco, plantain, banana, pineapples, cassava, and others. This is not to lose sight of the fact that they were indigenous crops like yams, beans, fluted pumpkin, melon, oil bean, okra, kola nuts, and others. By introducing new crops, however, the Europeans helped to improve the quality and quantity of Nigerian food. They also contributed significantly to the economic growth of the country. We now look at the Arabs and the spread of Islam in Nigeria. And we say that contact between Nigerian area and the outside world to the north and northeast took place long before the advent of Islam. However, much more wide-ranging, permanent and significant contacts were established between the people of the Nigerian area and those of the Western Sahara, North Africa, Europe, Nile Valley, especially Egypt and the Middle East. It is difficult to date precisely the coming of Islam into the areas of the Central Sudan or the present-day Nigeria. It is, however, known that Kano-Mbonu Empire was the first to receive the religion in about the 11th century after death. It has been suggested that it was possible that the religion came into Bonu earlier than the 11th century, but was formally accepted by the ruling dynasty by the 11th century. The Muslim preachers who came to West Africa were traders. By the 9th century AD, most of the desert groups who controlled the trade route had been converted to Islam. It is believed that both the Arabs and the desert Berber dwellers carried the Islamic religion to Bonu Empire. Having looked at how trade first came, the Arabs came into Nigerian area through the northern fly via the Sahara Desert. It was trade contact that first brought them before Islamic religion and Arabic education came in. This time around, we are now going to look at the reasons why Islamic religion and education was appealing to most West African and Nigerian areas. We say that the following are the reasons for the spread of Islam in West Africa. By the end of the 15th century, Islam has spread southwest to the fringe of the forest belt. The number one reason why Islam made progress was the nature of Islam. And we say that the nature of Islam as a religion, accepting polygamy to some extent, its tolerance of traditional African religions, its simplicity of doctrine and mode of worship helped propagators to make converts in Africa. These factors also made Islam easily adaptable to African communities with which it came in contact. Point number 2 was trade. That another major reason that led to the rapid spread of Islam in West Africa was the trans-Saharan trade network. From the 7th century onward, Muslim traders from the Maghreb and the Sahara started settling first in some of the market centers in the Sahara and then the Savannah areas. Point number 3, the activities of the Muslim clerics. We say that Islam also spread into West Africa through the activities of the Muslim clerics, marabouts and scholars or malams. These clerics or learned men founded their own religious centers which attracted students from all parts of the Western Sudan, and who, on the completion of their studies and training, went back to their own homes to win converts. Many of them went on to lecture, went on missionary tours to convert people, while others became advisors to Sudanese kings or to become effective rulers, on how to become effective rulers. Some clerics devoted a great deal of their time to writing books and instructions on all aspects of Islam for the education and conversion of people, or the purification and strengthening of Islam. Activities of rulers. Islam gained ground in West Africa through the activities of individual rulers. The rulers of Western Sudan encouraged their trans-Saharan trade and extended hospitality to both traders and visiting clerics. But perhaps one of the most important ways in which they encouraged acceptance of Islam was through their own conversion. Number 5, holy war. What is more, another way in which Islam was introduced and spread in West Africa in general, and the Western Sudan in particular, was the militant jihad, or the waging of holy war against infidels or lukewarm Muslims. This method allowed the third and final stage of the process of Islamization to reach its climax with the 19th century jihad in Western Sudan, between Mali and Senegambia and Hausa lands in northern Nigeria. Number 6, there was also intermarriage. Islam also spread onto West Africa through intermarriages. The Muslim merchants from the North Africa came down, settled, and married their African women, who became Muslims, including their children. Scholars. The early Muslim missionaries opened Islamic schools and colleges. The products of these schools and the colleges also did well by spreading the religion. They worked with the rulers as advisors, counselors, and others. Having looked at the reasons why Islam spread to Nigerian areas and West Africa, we are now going to look at the effects of Islam in Nigeria. So we now look at the effects of Islam in Nigeria, and we say that Islam had great impact on the people and state of West Africa in general. Some of the identified effects are: 1. Unity. Islam cut across family, clan, and ethnic ties and loyalties, and emphasized unity and brotherhood. System of administration is number 2. Most of the Muslim rulers of northern Nigeria adopted the Muslim systems of justice and taxation. Number 3, establishment of diplomatic relationship. Number 4, pilgrimage to Mecca. The pilgrimage or Hajj, which Muslims were expected to undertake if they were able to do so, contributed in many ways to the growth and strength of some of the states. Number 5 is literacy. Islam introduced literacy as well as Muslim education into the northern Nigerian area. Literacy made it possible for scholars to preserve the history and the oral tradition of some of the states in books. Number 6, establishment of schools. As Islam continued to spread in many parts of northern Nigeria, schools and educational centers were established in large towns and cities. Number 7, change in culture. There were also the change in cultural life as a result of the introduction of Islam in northern Nigerian area. The last one is trade. Islam promoted trade between West Africa and the Mediterranean. The religion developed and widened the trans-Saharan Caribbean trade. This is where we will end today's lecture on chapter 5. In chapter 6, we will discuss the title, we will discuss the topic titled The Jihad of Usman Dan Fodio and the Establishment of Sokoto Caliphate. Thank you.